How many of you have heard of preppers? Is that a term anyone's heard of? I'm fascinated by preppers. They are the people who go to extreme measures to prepare for emergencies. Now, not necessarily like a strong storm or a heart attack. And there are survivalists. I mean, if you've seen Naked and Afraid, you know survivalists. No, but these people are preparing for the end of the world, like a nuclear war, or a takeover of our political or social order, or a zombie apocalypse. I first got introduced to preppers from the TV show Doomsday Preppers. Anyone ever seen that? It was a while ago on National Geographic. And these folks would spend tens of thousands of dollars preparing their homes or building entirely new homes, some of them underground, some of them off in the distance. They were stockpiling food and weapons. They are preparing for this end of the world, hence the name preppers. One of the shows had a family that built an entire separate home out of shipping containers. They stockpiled enough food to last their family of 4 for 20 years. They had weapons to protect themselves from people who would come and try to take away their food. And they said that this wasn't a just-in-case kind of thing. It was a lifestyle. And for them, it was an inevitability. They spent much of their time preparing for this apocalypse that they saw as probable. Now, these are the times that I think I should have been a sociologist, because I find this just fascinating. Like, I really wonder how their minds work, because it's so different from my own. And how did the first prepper think about this? And what are their ideologies that make them think that this is the most reasonable response to what's going on in our world? But then, probably like most of you as well, and true of any of us who've watched any kind of reality show, we step back and we see if we could imagine ourselves in that position. And honestly, for me, the answer is no. No, not because I don't believe in the apocalypse, which, for the record, I don't, but because I can't imagine myself living in a shipping container for 20 years. And I love my family, I do, but I don't want to spend 20 years with them in 100 square feet. I think I would probably rather be taken out by the apocalypse. I would be alive if I were in that shipping container. But is that really the point of living? For me, what is missing is the belonging. The isolation would defeat the purpose of living for me. Living without other people, being in community, growing and exploring and changing and caring for others is what gives me life. In the end, I would want to feel like I belong to something bigger than myself and a shipping container. I think one of the byproducts of our postmodern culture is our deep hunger to belong. This is so ironic because we are, in theory, more connected than ever before to everyone else with technology. We've got social media, we've got texting. Essentially, I have a video conference device that I am carrying around on my body at all times. But despite this, more and more people feel isolated and marginalized. And instead of that technology uniting us, it gives us a simulated sense of belonging that leaves us feeling hollow and disconnected. Consumerism and our Western ideals of individualism, and this is a thing here in the West, I've noticed. This individualism runs strong out here in Arizona. But by the individualism and our consumerism, we are wanting more and more, and we isolate ourselves. Individualism tells us that we are mountains unto ourselves, and by the time that we realize that this is a lie, we find ourselves even further isolated and lonely. John O'Donohue, in his book, External Echoes, Exploring Our Yearning to Belong, says that our global village has no roads or neighbors. It is a faceless limbo. And he says that we are in the midst of a huge crisis of belonging. As I've been getting to know you all here, I've been hearing your stories and how you found Unitarian Universalism and UUCP in particular. I've been struck by how many of you, when you tell me your story, how many of you say that you were part of the Trump bump? How many of you is that here? There's a few here. A number have said yes, and they're naming that. I came as part of the Trump bump. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's a term for people who decided to join Unitarian Universalism after Trump got elected. It's a phenomenon that happened in UU congregations across the country. In fact, Unitarian Universalists are one of the few religious denominations and the only liberal denominations that are growing in membership with adults. And I believe it is because of this coming back together. But it does seem that UUCP got a bumper crop of Trump bumpers. You see what I did there? And again, that's where my inner sociologist comes out. So why did these people join a religious organization? They could have volunteered at a political party or an activist group or just put a lot of bumper stickers on their car. Why join a Unitarian Universalist congregation? I think belonging is at the core. When we felt like we didn't know our country anymore, many people wanted to find a place where they felt like they belonged, where their worldview, and note I am not saying their political view, but their worldview matched others and they could feel a sense of connectedness and togetherness. From the time that we are born, we yearn to belong. We look for where we fit in, where we feel safe, and where we can be our full selves. We come to this place because we are all craving that same thing. And yet I know that there are many of us in this community that still might not feel that you belong. It might be because you don't know a lot of people and there's still a sense of isolation, even among so many people here in the sanctuary. It may be because, like some of the people in our examples of our together time, you don't feel like there is space for you here or for somebody like you with your particular situation. It may be because you have experienced hurt or betrayal or confusion or a sense that you are not needed. Or it could be because you have had so much isolation and hurt in your outside world that you are still navigating what belonging feels like, even in this environment. Parker Palmer says that spirituality refers to the eternal human longing to be part of something larger than one's own ego. We want to belong to something larger than ourselves. For Unitarian Universalists, that may be God. That may be the earth. It may be community. It may be something within us, or it may be something outside larger than ourselves. It is our nature to want to belong to something together and know we're in it together, and to know that at a deep level. Despite our individualistic culture, we yearn for that deep sense of connection and belonging. Unconnected, we are just preppers in a shipping container, existing with our food and water and fighting off anyone else who infringes on our territory. Connected, however, we are more human. We are more than ourselves alone. And I believe that we can get that sense of belonging in an environment of worship and in religious context better than we can in other societal gathering places. Especially in Unitarian Universalism, we are working to build the community here that we wish to see in the wider world. We are intentionally looking at our structures, our behaviors, our culture, and doing the work to make it more inclusive, creating a circle ever wider to invite whoever needs to become welcome into it. Together, we are following that deep drive to imagine that larger web of belonging. But belonging doesn't just happen. Like Amy said, you don't just show up somewhere and poof, you belong. Belonging often depends on making connections, knowing people who know some of your story or share a common experience. I know that when I first started coming to a UU church, I was a lurker for several years. I actually didn't really want to belong. I just wanted to escape for an hour each week, and that was fine. But once that feeling of escape was filled, I found myself yearning for something more. So I got involved. I know that for myself and for many of you, my sense of belonging was very tightly connected to my UU congregation. My friends, my sense of contribution, and a deep connection to a shared commitment was shared with these other people. Some of you still might be in that escape and lurker place, and that is just fine. But if you are looking more to belong, I encourage you to join something. Be a part of something more than just attending worship. I promise you that it will enhance your sense of belonging. And if you don't know where to start, please reach out to me. I've got lots of ideas. Belonging sometimes means looking at our systems of oppression. It's easy for those who are in our culture's dominant groups to say that we are open and welcoming and anyone can belong. But sometimes, even when we are unaware, we are sending the opposite message. When we point out people's differences or treat them differently for any reason, we are sending the message that they don't belong with us. We need to individually educate ourselves and be aware of different perspectives so that we are not excluding anyone from belonging here. And belonging sometimes requires a risk of vulnerability. Sometimes it means asking for help, or receiving help, or sharing a difficult story, or making a mistake. This week, I've been really gratified by 2 different instances of people telling me that they were humaning. That was the topic of my first sermon with you all 4 weeks ago. First of all, I love to know that you were listening to me. But second of all, I love knowing that you heard my expectation that we'll make these mistakes and we'll try to be vulnerable and come back into community with each other. I think that each time we are affirmed in our ability to be fully human, our belonging cup is filled a little bit more. Douglas Steer says, "The ancient question, 'Who am I?' inevitably leads to a deeper one. Whose am I?" Because there is not identity outside of relationship. You cannot be a person by yourself. To ask whose am I is to wonder, who do you belong? It's to extend the question far beyond your smaller, self-absorbed self and wonder, where do I belong? To whom do I belong? It means asking, who needs me? Who cares for me? Who is affected by my choices? Whose life is bound up with mine? I yearn for each and every one of you to say, I belong here at UUCP. I feel like I am home here, and I belong here. I can speak my mind and stretch my spirit and let my soul soar here. I hope that you can say you belong here and know that that belonging extends to everyone, and mostly knowing it applies to you too. So might it be.